Um, let's at least now get into predictions of season 2, though. Um, so what are your predictions for season 2 now that we've seen all of season 1 now?
I can just say Karen's probably going to play a bigger role. And I feel like naturally this show, or at least this season, might feel more like Daredevil season 4 than this season did. Because this season just had to do with many different pieces, and like it's kind of like a Frankenstein's monster, but actually done kind of well. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
can tell where the original vision of the show started, and where the new vision ended, and it's like, oh, okay, I can understand it. Like you can see Benson and Moore's direction just show off what the vision was, right? And then you can see the original direction being shown off with the other episodes. And yeah, I feel like I hope we get I hope we get what's his name? We get Muse. But
Mm-hmm.
I is he I mean, I guess he's dead. I guess he's dead now. So I don't even know. I feel like, yeah, I'm like, okay, I guess they're gonna focus more on Matt assembling his team and fighting against Fist's team, because I feel like he tasted what it was like for him to work with someone else again, finally once again to work with him. And I guess obviously Frank is not the ideal person to work with. You don't want to work with that guy. I mean, he's just a loose cannon, and I mean, I love that guy. I love him, but he's also not the guy you want to work with. So that's one thing for sure. But I'm really expecting to see more defenders. I just think that's just going to be a thing, right? We're obviously not going to get Spider-Man in this show because Tony doesn't like making money, so that's the thing. Um, yeah, I'm really hoping to see more street level characters to just have a uprising against Fisk. That'd be fun, right? To truly embrace that to truly embrace the superhero-ish nature with these street level characters. That's really fun to see, right? So I'm really hoping that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm betting there's more Bullseye, and the anti-vigilante task force is gonna be a bigger role. I'm 100% betting. And this was just a start, and then we're gonna get more of that in the next season. And I really can't wait. It's just gonna be really interesting to see how that goes. And I'm really glad. One thing for sure is that Fisk has gotten bigger and much bigger, and I think that's gonna make for it. Like, that's why he wears his white suits to even look more imposing, and he's looked a lot bigger too. So I'm like, oh my goodness. I can't wait I can't wait till we see like Spider Verse type Kingpin where he's just humongous. I mean, that'd be hilarious. He's
Yeah.
just huge. I'm like, wow. And then yeah, I think I'm hoping there's gonna be more Bullseye. I'm hoping there's more Punisher, and I just hope overall next season is a lot more of a focused storyline. I feel like that's the thing about this season. This season is just picking up where we're picking up where Matt is just feeling the most trauma, and now he's just have to work through that. He needs to work through that through many different ways. So that's why he has to, that's why he was in Daredevil for that long. So I hope that this one is a more focused storyline, a lot more tense. I'm hoping because it's 8 episodes. We actually lost the episode for season 2, so it's gonna be 8 episodes. So I'm hoping it's a lot more focused. We get a lot more girth to these episodes. I'm hoping like at least an hour each, please. I
Mm-hmm.
love longer episodes, especially for Daredevil. I think it warrants that. And I mean, I don't know if we're just going to wish list now for season 2, but I also just want more religious symbolism. I just want more of those discussions, because I feel like now more than ever, I feel like Matt should be going back to his religion. If you're going back to Daredevil, at least go back to your religion, or at least show off um the importance of your beliefs and stick to them. Right? I love those conversations, and oh man, I miss his mom. I mean, I like it. I like the presence that she had, and I'm hoping that she's in season 2. But I don't know. I don't think that's going to be the case. We'll see. We'll see. I'm just praying for just a good season 2. Honestly, an even better season than season 1. So, yeah, that's all I really have. Predictions, my wish list, all that. What about you?
I think for me, I think what I'm more really looking forward to, especially, is that I think that season 2 will definitely be a moment where it's this is going to be the official time where we have the Defenders. And I think this is going to be Defenders 2.0. This is going to feel like not only Daredevil Born Again Season 2, but like as this one sometimes felt like Daredevil Born Again Season 1, but Daredevil Netflix edition Season 4 to a degree, or at least trying to bridge it from Netflix to Disney Plus. I feel like what's going to happen is that this is going to be where we're going to basically have Defender Season 2, but in the form of Daredevil Born Again Season 2 in some degree. And I feel like the reason why that the whole thing with the Punisher special presentation is going to be happening, I think it's because they're going to tie that into Season 2. And that's definitely going to be one of those moments where it's like we have that little in-between film on what happened. And I'm still going to stick to where I feel like Daredevil Season 1, Born Again Season 1 is going to be the Infinity War. And then you have Daredevil Born Again Season 2 be the end game of the Daredevil storyline. And then you have the Punisher special that's coming up with releasing that same year next year. I feel like that's going to be like the Ant-Man and the Wasp part of the Infinity War Endgame storyline, just because with Ant-Man and the Wasp we got to see what was going on during the events of Infinity War up until the snap. And I feel like honestly with this there's so many parallelisms between Daredevil Born Again Season 1 and Infinity War, where the heroes, they ended up getting together, they ended up losing. Thanos is literally Kingpin in this series, and that he literally did things with the snap of his finger, and instead of wiping away the existence of half of the universe, instead I feel like he wiped away the existence of free will in New York. And I feel like it's more of like they're living under like a monarchy, like a dictatorship, like an actual rule. And
Hmm.
it's interesting on how scary that how this is written. It gets released at a time where it's just like eerily similar to a degree in the world. But honestly I'm hoping and praying to God that this show does make an impact for people. And I hope it's not in the way that it's going to be, if Daredevil could have a revolution, then so can we type of movement. I hope it's not one of those things where it's like it's going to start up violent movements. I hope that this is going to be a pinnacle to where if people feel like they're feeling hopeless right now because that they feel like right now economically the world's not doing so great, politically we feel like we're in a pit, socially there's a lot of anxiety and there's a lot of worry. I want for them to feel like this is the series that's going to be thinking, yes, there's a lot of things that are similar between this and real life, but I hope that this series gives the message of just because that all of this chaos is going around you, it doesn't mean that we're going to stay here, but we're going to do our best so that way we can get forward. We've done it in the past in history. We've done it through Civil War. We've done it through the Revolutionary War. We've done it through a whole bunch of different ups and downs in our nation's history, and we could do it again. And same thing with New York. In this series, New York had a lot of different things going on between in in history, in state history, in U.S. history. There's a lot of instances where where New York went through so much. Especially one of the biggest things, or if the biggest thing of all, was definitely 9/11. And then look at how New York ended up rebuilding itself. They were ending up being stronger than ever. So shout out to you guys in New York who, when during all this chaos happened, you guys ended up rebuilding yourself, and you guys were scared, you were terrified, you guys didn't know what more to expect. I mean, I feel so horrible that you guys lost family and lost friends and loved ones during that whole event, but you guys went and you took that pain and you rebuilt the city to become bigger. But in this fictionalized Marvel version, you guys have to do it again. So I feel like what I want for season 2 is more of the aspects of BB Urich. I want for her to be siding with Daredevil. I want for her to team up with them. As much as like how we have Karen teaming up with Ben, I want for also Karen to team up with BB, just to feel like we got a little bit of Ben Urich back. I want for it to be like it's not just only the Defenders, but I want it to feel like this is a series about community. This isn't just about vigilantes. This is about people. Daredevil to me is about people who they feel like they're just ordinary people and that they can make a difference. It doesn't have to be through violence, it doesn't have to be through chaos. You know, making a difference could be doing videos like this, where it's like something like you and I are talking, and that, you know, God uses these type of videos to inspire people to take a stand for themselves and take a stand in the way that I feel like, you know, they could be able to say, you know what, I'm going to use my voice. I'm going to use the gifts that God gave me, and I'm going to use them so that way I could be able to help people to not feel hopeless. As in the Bible, it does state for us to look at the Lord as a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. And this is definitely the moment here for Matt where it has to, where he's at this point where it's like, God, be a light onto my feet and a light onto my path. Be this spiritual light that I could at least feel like I can at least be a leader, and use me to lead these people to not be afraid. And it's like he's taking this stance where I feel like, as Moses, when he went up to the mountain and encountered the burning bush and came back, and when God told him, when God told Moses to go to Pharaoh, to Egypt, and to tell him to let his people go, but Moses refused to do so because he felt like he couldn't be able to do it because he didn't have the voice to do so. He told him, I will send Aaron to go with you, so that way he will be able to help you through it. I feel like at this point, in a religious standpoint and in a way that you could be able to tie it in, because yeah, I could agree with you. I would love for there to be more Christianity and Catholicist talk. I want for them to be more in season 2. And I feel like this is the moment where I feel like he literally has to take the leadership skills that Moses had. And I'm not saying for him to be exactly like Moses, but to be a leader like Moses, and for him to go and to find the right people and the right vigilantes and the right people who are not corrupt by Fisk's power, and to go move forward. So I definitely feel like this is going to be, instead of saying, let my people go, so that way to move the Israelites out of Egypt into the promised land, this is going to be more of, let my people go from your insane ideas and your insane tyranny, and let us get New York City back. That's what I want for Daredevil Born Again season 2 to be. I'm hoping that that's where we head to. And I really want for this to be a series about hope. And I want it to be about that anybody can be a superhero, regardless on if you have abilities or not.
Amen. Yeah, I'd love to. That's. I think you hit on the point. I feel like, yeah, the whole point of this show is like, you can always fall back down. I feel like that's the thing about Matt. You always get hit down so many times, right? But you get the choice, and you have the choice to get back up no matter what. And, I mean, it takes time for that. And I feel like this show really does do a mature exploration of really just losing so much, right? Like, on the surface, it looks like Matt is perfectly fine. He's coping. He has a new place. He has a girlfriend. He has everything a guy could want. He have, I mean, not just a girl. I mean, he also have a career too. But he has everything that like anyone would want. He has a career. He has money. He has all of that. He has coworkers. But beneath all that surface level stuff, there's nothing that really stands for anymore. He's just a guy. He's just a lawyer who's trying to support a system that's already crumbling down to its knees, right? So that's why everything in his life is just not what it seems. He seems supposed to be, and it seems like he should be at his most stable, but yeah, he's honestly the most unstable right now. He's just a ticking point where he's just gonna crack. And I feel like that's the same thing for Fisk. Fisk also is the same way, where he comes back to a life that he's familiar with, but not a life that he is all the way there. His wife was cheating on him and didn't even know much, right? And then now it's just nothing, right? The relationship kind of stands on nothing if they can't trust each other no more. And that's on Fisk, and that's his entire thing, right? And now he's back to a life where he has to reinvent himself, and reinvent himself to a way where he still maintains power while also being what's it called? He wants to be a new person, right? But inevitably those cracks start to show, and it's gonna make him fall back to who he was and who he truly wants to be. He wants to be the man in charge. He doesn't wanna he doesn't wanna be the guy who has to go through all this paperwork for laws and all that. He just wants to get the job done. And I feel like that's why these both of these men, right? Both of these men can't handle the paperwork. They can't handle the constant bickering and constant moving pieces that get stuff done in this system. I feel like the system really shaped these men to want to go beyond the system and be more cutthroat in a way, you know? And I think that's why it makes for such an interesting conversation between both of these characters about what it is to reinvent themselves and could they really do that, you know? And I think this kind of also really focuses on, I wouldn't say it's not really like um, direct, a very direct indicator of who these characters are, but I would say it's also a focus on addiction, you know, it's habits, right? These characters are habitually both criminals in different ways. Matt is a vigilante, right? I mean, he is a hero, right? But he's also a vigilante. Just gotta accept the facts, right? And then there's Fisk, who is the biggest criminal in the city. So you know, you just kind of have to do all that different type of stuff. Where we just have to accept the facts that it's just kind of sad. You know, it's we want to believe that people could change, but how w- how far are you willing to help? If not, they're gonna help themselves, you know. And I think Matt didn't have anyone to help him because he kept himself isolated once again. You know, Karen's gone, Foggy's dead, and he's not in touch with his religion or his mother once again. You know, so the cracks started to show, and he can't support himself in this new reinvention, right? Because his habits, I mean, he is the person who he is in the dark, you know? He's the person who he is by himself, and I think that's why, you know, he faltered at the end. He couldn't stop being Daredevil because at in his heart, that's who he wants to be, right? And same thing for Fisk. In his heart, he'd rather be Fisk. He'd rather be Kingpin because that's how he's known his entire life. Even when he was a child, he just got the job done, right? With his dad, with him killing his dad, right? I mean, if he wanted it, right, he could have, he could have just, reported the dad to child support or, to like, where child abuse is, right, and the terrible parents, report them, right, and he gets a foster home. But Fish didn't want to do all that, right? He wanted to get the job done and job done now, and that's just evident of who he is as a character, and I think it's really a testament of the character writing of these two men, right? And I think that's what's so interesting about um this series because it is a less of a Daredevil show and it's more of a focus on Matt and Fisk and what both of these men are trying to do to be born again. And I think it's really intriguing, and it's gonna be really intriguing to see that in season two.
Yeah, I definitely believe so, and I feel like what the great thing about this season is that I feel like you're right. It doesn't feel like it's just Daredevil. It doesn't feel like if it's Kingpin. It really does feel like Wilson Fisk and Matt Murdock trying to reinvent themselves. And I feel like what realistically this season is really more about losing something, and it's recovering from a loss. And I didn't think about this until now because I feel like what's interesting about it is that Fisk was recovering from the loss of his wife because technically, if you think about it, he did lose his wife. He lost his wife, especially when he left. He lost a lot of things
Hmm.
that he could have had. When he left, he lost so much that she started running the game. She started running the business. She started doing her own stuff. It drove him apart. And then now, he was able to cope with it and be able to find a solution to bring it back together. Was it legitimate? No. Were there in ways that they could have done it, in a different, less violent and less sadistic manner? Yeah. But he did find his way, or at least he's on the path of finding his way to where he wants to be as Kingpin. Matt, on the other hand, which I understand him completely, especially because he's had so many times where he wants to be able to get to tell people about his problems. He wants to be able to get to tell people about who he is and that he's Daredevil and that he's trying to fight for the side of justice. But the thing is that there's so many people who realistically that they don't feel like vigilantism is something that they need. But unfortunately, with the way how Fisk has been, and especially in a corrupt state of mind, was the way he is, and trying to use this whole thing with the red docs as a way of being able to launder money and everything, I feel like, yeah, vigilantism is the only way where they're gonna have to take it back. And I'm not gonna debate on whether what's right or what's wrong, especially because this isn't the time to be able to do so either. But I think that ethically, yeah, it's not right on either person's side to do vigilantism to the point that you're taking the law into your own hands. But I also don't feel like corrupting the system is going to be the best way of having to fix things either. And people end up going into vigilantism because that I feel personally that people like to when I feel like when people grab this power and they have this ultimate amount of power, it comes to the point where I feel like they feel like I have the power, I can be able to do whatever I want. But then the thing is that when we get into this point where we're so immersed with any type of power, political power, spiritual power, well, you know what? Not even spiritual power. I'll leave spiritual power out of this. We get into so much with political power, economic power, social power, and it comes to the point that we're so absorbed into it, we think that we can be able to make sound decisions that it's built upon our own ideas. And the thing is that it can, but the thing is that you'd have to be in the right state of mind. Like if you're somebody who wants political power, to be able to dive into I'm going to make things this way for my personal needs and I don't care about everybody else, that's where you're taking it into the wrong hands. If your idea is I'm going to take this power into my hands, but I'm going to want to do it to a point where I want for people to be safe, but I want to do it in a vision that I could be able to do it correctly. But I do want the people of whatever I'm running, whether if it's I have the power of county, state, city, country, I want for them to give their voice out and say, what do you want? How can I change that in an ethical and legal way on doing so? That's the thing. If it's economic power, it's the same exact thing. Like, I got a lot of money. What can I do with this money that's going to help people instead of bankrupt them? When it comes to social power, what can I do with this amount of power that can bring people together, but it doesn't do it to the point where, they're doing it and uniting over hatred towards somebody else or a different group or a different organization? But instead, how can I be able to reunite people? But instead of having to unite them over hate, how can I unify them with a sound mind and a sound and sound clarity to the point where they could be able to say, yeah, this is our decision because that we're going forward and we want to be able to go forward in this direction, and we want to do it to where everybody gets a fair chance and everybody gets an equal say. That's the thing about this that I honestly feel like is what makes Daredevil Born Again, I think, the best series. Because I think realistically, this is a series that has to deal with about loss. This is a series that has to deal with losing something precious, whether if it's someone that has helped shaped a part of your life, or an event, or events, or just things that really just came into fruition, got taken away. How do you go and deal with it? How do you go amount with power and take it and reinvent it, but reinventing yourself in a positive manner to where you can be able to do what you can and what you want, but you're not going to hurt somebody else. This series literally is about mental health. This is an awareness of mental health. This is an awareness of not only just mental health, but also the human mind on what it's capable of doing. This is literally a series that dives directly into social engineering and into the ideas of humanity and humankind. This is literally what I get from this. Honestly, I kind of get the Dark Knight a little bit from this. From this season finale, I got a little bit of the Dark Knight with talks of ethical issues, especially with that one, because I do know that, with Heath Ledger's version of the Joker, there were moments where you're thinking he's got a point, but does he have to go all the way into thinking that this is right? Same thing with Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. There was a lot of instances on there too where you thought, you know, he's right. The rich people didn't care about those in Gotham. That's why people are always going and revolting, and that's why Gotham has become a dangerous place. And why do you think that it's always crime ridden? Because there's so many people that they don't care. The thing is that what Daredevil Born Again does so smart, in my opinion, is that not only do they dive into the mental health aspects of individuals, but I like that they dive into the human condition and survival of the fittest, and that they use so many different terms of biology, that it not only goes and it takes this bold step forward into not only kind of predicting what's going on right now in our society and in our world right now, but it's doing so in a manner where it feels like this is the right thing to have at this point in time, because we don't want to hear what's on the news. We don't want to know what's going on. We don't want to feel like we're in this cluttered state of being. But at the same time, we need something that can make us think, how could we be able to avoid something like this? And sure, the future generations are going to make the same exact mistake as the one we're in right now and in the previous ones. But that doesn't mean that we should stop there. At this point, what this means is that we should learn how to educate ourselves, take this initiative, take what the media, like Daredevil has been telling us, to make it feel like we're not just people. A city is a community. Counties are communities. States are communities. The country is one big community. Every single country is one big community. Daredevil is all about community. It's always been built upon community. And I love the fact that they emphasize this so much throughout this season, and that it makes it feel like you're not underpowered. You're not hopeless. You're not in a state of being where you're not needed. That's what I love about this, because it makes you feel like you're there in New York, feeling helpless. You're thinking to yourself, what am I doing? What can I do to help? This is one of those shows that I feel like it really gets your adrenaline up. It gets your blood pressure going. There's so much tension. There's so much anxiety. But at the same time, it makes you feel like you are a superhero in the end, because it also makes you feel like you are doing something.
Absolutely, I feel like that's what most of these characters are trying to do, but trying to make a change, and they think that the system can't support that. And I think that's what's so cool about this show, right? And it's just an evidence of being the product of your environment, right? The product of New York's environment is gonna start producing so many different types of characters, and it's gonna be really toxic. It's toxic. It's gonna be a toxic place, and I'm surprised no one's ever tried moving out of New York. To be honest, you probably should. It's not even close to healthy right now. So I feel like that's why this show, it's been a very fulfilling exploration. Of course, I do think there's stuff I wish they done better in terms of their exploration of that. Or at least have things that are more. Um, I understand the nuance, right? But I do want things kind of spelled. To be honest, I want it kind of spelled out to me and kind of eloquently spelled out to me. And I think that's going to be really awesome to see that. And I wish we saw that more. But I think for the most part, I just and you're right. I do think it is a focus on mental health, and that's really important. I feel like these characters, they're like Matt and Fisk are not mentally well. That's just a fact, right? You cannot be mentally well if you're doing all of this type of stuff, right? And I think it's just they do it out of urges. They do it out of almost like addiction to a degree, because they can't stop being who they are, and addictions are everywhere. It's just, and you can't just put off an addiction forever. It's just, you just gotta take it in and do it one step at a time, handle it. And I feel like these two men haven't handled it very well. So that's why, I really do like how they've done that so far, and I hope they explore that more. I feel like all the superhero stuff loses its impact if we don't see the human behind him. And I think this show's done a great job with that. It almost feels like Sam Raimi's Daredevil because it feels like what would they would focus on in terms of the city. The city is the most important part of this show. The city is what makes up Matt and what brings hope to Matt, you know? Like that one shot when they're right there by the docks, right? Where Matt and Karen were just sitting there. And Matt was hearing the cries, he was hearing the roars and the terror of these people. You know, I think that's the thing that's gonna be really, you know, that's the thing that sparked him, you know. It's the thing that gave him not hope, but almost vengeance and anger that there has to be more, right? There has to be more for, you know, in God's plan, right? I feel like Matt never said that out loud, but I think for him, it's just like there has to be more in God's plan, right? And I can do that. I can deliver, you know. And that's what makes him truly Daredevil, the guy who thinks and believes to take that risk, to take that leap into heroism. And I think that's gonna be really fun to explore in season two, which I'm betting is the payoff for most of this stuff in season one.
No, definitely. And I also do feel like you're right. Like, he does pray to God about things, especially matters like this. He still prays. I mean, we even got to see. I love the fact that even when you talked about that, I love that little mention that it also goes to show the chemistry that he had with Heather at that point, where that one scene where he's praying and then she goes in and she says, "You're still praying? Like, you still pray?" And he says like, I don't do it all the time, but and during certain circumstances I end up resulting back to it. I love that because I see, just from that alone, it just goes to show on how different their ideologies are, that Matt does not want for somebody to die on his watch. He doesn't want to feel like he's going to be held responsible for something so tragic, especially because that he saw people die. He saw, or no, not saw, but at least he felt people die. Sheesh, there we go again. But at least he's experienced people dying. Like, he's experienced the death of his dad. He's experienced the death of the father from the church. He's experienced death from people that were right in front of him, and then experiencing Foggy's death was the one that took the cake. And to me, it just goes to show that Heather right there was at that point, just giving the heads up of, okay, I think I'm done with what your ideas are, what your idealists are, or idealistic, life is, and I think I'm willing to call it in. I'll call it quits and throw in the towel. But you are so hopeful, and I really want for them to explore more of Matt's faith in God more in season two. And something that I feel like that's really going to impact season two, especially, is the fact that with everything that's going on in the world, in politics, and in the economy, I think that season two is going to be shaped out of what's going on right now. Because when season one was being written, this was before any of this was going on, and now that this is some eerily similar to what's happening, I think that what's going on now is going to play a big part into season two, and it would be very interesting to see if it does take an impact on everything that's going on right now. Like, it's going to take if it takes an impact, if it makes an impact in society, if it makes an impact on life or people's worldviews, I would be very surprised. I would be very genuinely surprised. It will be scary, I will admit, if it does reflect it in a way that we didn't see imaginable. Because what made me freaked out a little bit was the fact that you called two times about what the lines were, and they were very, very on point. And that's scary enough as it is, because of the fact that we're so used to these plots to the point that we know how these people think in some degree. So having for this to go into this part and be like, hey, this is going to get interesting. Yeah, this is going to get interesting. All right. It's going to get interesting because I feel like, there's so much at stake here. There's so much at stake to the point where it's unimaginable. But I am excited for season two. And I do want for this to be a series. I want for season two to be a season and a series to go show that this is an Exodus story. This is an Infinity War / Endgame story, but it is an Exodus story. It's a story that basically goes to show that he is taking, like I said, he's taking the embodiments of Moses and he's going to Fisk, and he's going to go to Fisk several times, and he's going to say, let my people go from your tyranny and from your insanity, and let me be able to just let them be. Let me help to let them be and don't have a hold on them. But I feel like what's going to happen, just like how in the story in the Bible about Moses, of where the Pharaoh's heart says, no, I'm not going to let your people go. And when God sent plagues to Moses and to Egypt and sent them every single time that Pharaoh said no, God's going to harden Kingpin's heart, and he's going to say, I am going to make things. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to say it in my Kingpin voice to make it a little bit more official. He probably was going to say something to Matt where if they meet up and cross paths again, which I feel like the writers are going to do so, it's going to be something along the lines of, I have tried several times to tell you about our agreement, and if one of us crossed that line, then we were going to take more further action. Well, you crossed the line. You've crossed it. And he's going to turn it on him. And his heart's going to harden. And he's going to be putting it along saying, you did this. I didn't do anything. I'm protecting our streets. So for that, there will be a lot more to this than anything. More retaliation from you means more stricter ideas that'll be running around the streets, and they will be coming after you, and they will be coming after everybody that you love and everyone that you care about. And I mean it, because if any of you touch my empire, you touch my city, especially touch my Vanessa, then this city will crumble, and I will make a new empire. I bet you something's going to happen like that. But because of that, I bet you, because if something does happen like that, God will strike him. God will strike him in the form of people are going to start protesting. People are going to start looting a lot more, and they're going to have more of a cause to do so. And Fisk is not going to have all the resources to do so. Because with the cops who are already going and saying, oh, this looter's right here, what are we going to do with him? Shoot him right there, and then they put a mask on him, calling him a vigilante. How many times are you going to do that before you silence all of New York? Are you going to do it to the point where everyone in New York is dead or left? Then if that's the case, what more of a city are you going to run? How many more people are you going to have? Are you going to rule over? That's my other question. That's what I want for season 2 to be. I want for season 2 to explore those themes. And I want for them to go deep and nitty gritty into that. Because honestly, if you just feel like you're silencing things because you feel like it's going to be uneasy about something, honestly, Daredevil was easily the series that I feel like Daredevil and Punisher were the shows about the uneasiness of life. And that they were about having to take that step forward. Somebody was willing to take that step forward, even if it meant risking their lives, risking everybody else's lives, family, friends, even the cities that they live in, and even risking their reputations. That's what Daredevil and Punisher are about, is risking their lives knowing that there's injustice that's going on. Now, like I said before, I don't agree with killing people. I don't agree with violence. I don't agree with Frank on those terms. But boy, when he puts on that armor, when he puts it on, that's when I'm like, okay, you know what? These guys are going to let it have it. And I say, God forgive me because honestly, I don't enjoy it. But it's Frank we're talking about, and he has more of a right sound in mind than any of those people that are in the anti-vigilante task force. Any of them, Frank has way more of a sound in mind. And if anything, I will look straight in this camera and say to John Bernthal and to say to Frank, I admire you for the fact that you guys know what's right and what's wrong, despite your methods of having to just slaughter people. That's just the beauty of what the Punisher is that, yeah, he's a killer, but he has the right sound in mind. He does not let the trauma of this past or trauma of anybody else's get to him to the point where it clouds his judgment. It gets to the point where he actually takes it and uses it as I've done this before. Okay, let me see if I can try to do Punisher. I've done this before, and I'm gonna have to do it again. So let's see. How am I gonna do it to where I could be able to at least do something? But I'm gonna get to have to kick some butt. There's a lot of things I can't say, especially because he cusses a lot, and this is a family friendly channel, so I can't say a lot. So, but I gotta admit, that's what I do love about Punisher, and that's what I love about Matt, and I think that's where I'm hoping the season 2 goes. And yeah, I mean, jeez, there was so much to unpack here. If this video ends up becoming the longest thing, or if this has to be split up into several parts, you guys will know why. The recording literally is almost going to be 2 hours here, which is crazy to think. But um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I mean, I don't want to end this recording, honestly. I really don't, because I'm having too much fun with this, and I don't want this to be the last episode. I don't want us to wait until next year until season 2 comes out. I really don't. I really don't want us to wait.
Oh yeah, dude. It's just so like I'm like they left us off on a cliffhanger, man. I have to wait another year, and yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just wow.